Well, I've been doing because I haven't had a book come out since 2023. So
Oh,
I've
okay.
been I've been practicing more interviewing others. So I'm not sure how I'll go on the other side of it, I guess.
So you're writing something at the moment? Or
Yeah, I've got well, I'm always got something on the go, but I don't know. I'm yeah, I guess I'm just sort of waiting for the thing to really strike. But it's also like I don't know how you go with life in general, but you know, I get up at 4:30 to go to work out before I go to my full-time job, before I take my kids to football. It's just
yeah, yeah.
occasionally during football practice, I'll have the laptop and I'll type for 20 minutes and then I'll just be mentally exhausted and drained. So,
Well, I'm
um,
I'm in a different stage of life, so I
yeah,
don't have
yeah.
a lot of that stuff. I don't have the children. My kids are adults and out of home, so
Uh,
um, yeah,
yeah. And I'm mindful of not like wishing away their childhood. Like I like
yeah,
being
yeah.
part of their footy practices, because they're not going to be there forever. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ben's Book Club. It is tradition in Ben's Book Club, and you can see everyone's already sort of got the drill. Everyone's in the chat typing where they're from and hello. We are a big family here, and it's lovely to see everybody from around Australia. Where do you originally hail from, Mary Rose? Can we
I grew
ask?
up in southeast Queensland, a little place called Greenmount, which is about 20 miles south of Toowoomba. Yeah. I'm I'm saying miles because when I was small, that's what
Yeah.
we used. So, so I went to school in Toowoomba, to boarding school, and then I lived in Brisbane for a few years
Yeah, right.
in Melbourne. Yeah,
And then obviously we got the cane out of a lot of that as well, right?
I did.
So anyone here from Queensland? We've got two Queenslanders here today. I don't know whether you can see Mary Rose. We've got my mum in the chat as well.
Oh, hello,
Uh,
Ben, Mum. I can see
yeah.
there's someone from the sunny coast, and I've spent a lot of time at the Sunshine Coast because my parents ended up living there, and my sister lives there now. So, and I'm going to
Beautiful
actually go to the
place.
Sunshine Coast Hinterland Writers Festival in early May too. I'll be there.
Oh, you're doing that this year.
Yes, because I'm going up there for family reasons, and it just happened to.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I did that one, I think last year or maybe the year before when it was first starting out, but it's awesome. It's a beautiful place.
yeah, yeah.
Um, really cool little theater as well. Yeah, if you need someone to interview people, I'm probably available.
Okay.
Saying,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. So welcome everyone to Ben's Book Club. If you're first time tuning in, this is a monthly series where we interview authors from Australia about some of their latest releases. And it's really an opportunity. Something that we really pride ourselves on is that we do open up the floor to readers to have a real moment where they can really talk to the authors. It's pretty rare, and I do a few in-person events, and we normally do, 10 minutes worth of Q&A at the end. But these events are about you guys. So we want to encourage you to be asking questions. And just so you know, tradition is now that the best question of the night, and Mary Rose will actually tag this one. So she's going to be taking notes about which is her favorite question, either makes her laugh, makes her cry, just an interesting question. Whatever it is, that questioner will be receiving a free signed copy of The Campers. We'll be mailing that one out. We'll grab your details at the end of the thing today, but we will be sending this to a very lucky winner. So try your best to ask some wonderful questions, please, please, please. Man, Evelyn. Now there's some
What?
people from some all over the world. So Randy, hello. Yes, Randy. And yes, we will ship to the USA, Randy. Don't you worry. We'll send it over there. Got a couple of people from all over Australia, but also from overseas as well. So the word is spreading about Ben's Book Club, and hopefully the quality of um, Australian authors as well. Because I think sometimes overseas we can get I don't know, people thumb their nose at us still, just convicts from that weird island. Hello, Ian. Ian's from the UK. He's been with us almost since day dot, I think, Ian, right? You were at the first one of these. Um, welcome back, Brant. I hope the 12 months have been good and you were away for good reasons. But it's good to have you back, man. I appreciate you. All right, let's talk and introduce our author today. We've got Maryrose Cuskelly. She's a writer of fiction and non-fiction. She is the author of The Campers, which has just come out, which we're very excited to talk about with you today. And you've got an awesome poster in the background there.
Yeah.
And The Cane, which was a bestseller and shortlisted for the best debut in the 2023 Davitt Awards. And I believe The Cane and Ian, can you please help me? I think Ian's in here. Couldn't make Ian. Was Maryrose the very first one? It was one of the first interviews we did here. Do you remember this, Maryrose?
I think I think I was the inaugural interviewee.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, it's
I'm so excited to be back.
yeah, it's awesome. We haven't had yeah, so Ian's saying yes, definitely. We 3 years ago. Can you talk to us, Maryrose, very quickly about how your life has changed since the cane? Like what happened with the cane reader response and how are you feeling right now with the campers entering the world?
Look, the cane was did just much so well, like much better than I could have hoped for. It was it was a bestseller. It was kind of reprinted several times, so that was just fantastic. And because before that, I'd always thought of myself as a non-fiction writer, so
Yes.
to have the cane succeed was fantastic. And I guess having that success made me think, oh well, I'll go with the novel again. So hence the campers. So I guess it just helped kind of shift my perspective a bit about what who I was as a writer and what I could do. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's important. The cane for
Yeah. And is there anything about particularly this process or this part of being an author that you enjoy or maybe even don't enjoy so I can avoid it? But doing these interviews, what are some of the things that you really respond to doing these? Or do you not really like doing press as much?
Oh no, I do. I do. I mean, particularly the thing that I like, I think the most is when someone, I don't know, just when people, they might pick up on something that I hadn't actually, it had slipped into the book without me kind of
Yeah.
necessarily deliberately putting it in there. So
Yeah.
that's always great. I love that. I mean, of course, obviously, I love it when people like the book um, and when they in some ways, like every now and again, someone reads the book in a way that is closer than I feel like I wrote the book, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you do get that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's always really fantastic. And that is about, just how much people bring to their reading experience, like how much we all bring to our reading experience, and
Yeah.
how certain books will speak to you in a certain way, and that's
Yeah.
about you. So it's an interaction between the reader and the book,
Yeah.
and that's a really great thing.
Yeah, and I do think too, because I don't know when you actually finished the first draft of the campers, but all that like immediacy of it is something that probably happened maybe even a couple of years ago for you. And so now people are sort of reading it, and for you it's a little bit more removed, but for them
Yeah.
it's so immediate and personal. Like when did the first draft sort of get finished for the campers?
Ooh, it all does kind of bleed into one, but
Yes, it does.
it was one of those books that, as I was writing it, it became more and more of the moment and more um, topical because of the homelessness situation and just
Mm,
the housing crisis and all that sort of thing. So when I first started, well, actually, when I first started thinking about writing the book, which was quite a long time ago, um, you know, obviously there were homeless people who were homeless or people who were finding it difficult getting housing, but it wasn't just the just the issue it is now, and just the
yeah.
crisis or the crisis wasn't as obvious now. So
Mm,
so I guess when did I write? Oh, where are we? 2025. So probably 2020, early 2023, I suppose. But
yeah.
it's kind of, it's certainly, I did this book, for some reason it did really. I found it difficult to write, and I'm not really sure why. So it did take a lot of drafts. It took a couple of structural edits with, the editor that the publisher had given me. So, and I think because partly, or actually, a friend who knows me very well and has known me for a long time, and she said to me, "This was the first thing I've read of yours that I couldn't hear like your voice in my ear."
Mm.
And so I think because the voice is kind of different from,
Yeah.
it's very different from the Cane and from even Wedderburn, which was the true crime book. So maybe it was that I made it kind of seem like a hard work to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, I think you've done like an amazing job with the book. And it's tricky because, I mean, we both read so many books, so it's hard to remember, but it did feel very, it might be the wrong word, but it felt very elegant, like just by a sentence level,
Okay.
like your craft felt very sure of itself. And like I think The Cane was a brilliant book as well, and definitely felt the same thing there. But it feels like you're just sort of settling into the things that you really love to do. That's how
Mm.
this read to me, at least. Um, Hello, Alan. We've got a first timer here from Brisbane. Very welcome, Alan. Thank you for tuning in. Um, I wanted to talk about what you just mentioned, actually. So you just brought this up about the structural editing. So can you talk about what changes that actually made to the novel? And I'm wondering about the structure because it is such an interesting novel that I think I don't want to say it bends or breaks any rules. I don't know whether it does that, but it does push into areas that I wasn't expecting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a book that maybe could have been bigger or it could have been. Anyway, can you talk about the structure and the editing process and what changes that made to your novel?
Yeah, I suppose for the structural edit, it was more about the plotting, the plotting of it. And, I was kind of struggling with the ending
Yeah,
and I don't want to, I won't give it away any spoilers because not everyone may have read it, but there is a certain it doesn't kind of tie up everything in a neat bow at the end. And I
yeah,
suppose, that was a kind of a deliberate choice, but it was even a little bit more open-ended and a bit unsatisfactorily so. And so
okay,
I just had to think a bit more. And I think actually what it was originally in the first few drafts, the character of Sholto, who's the kind of self-appointed spokesperson and unofficial leader of the campers, who are these houseless or homeless people who camp
yep,
park next to this inner city cul-de-sac. He was a bit more, not a cipher exactly, but he was less. Um, he was a bit more of a mystery in that it was more about what Leah was projecting onto him. So Leah
yep,
was the protagonist.
yep.
And in one draft, you didn't actually hear Sholto's voice at all. And,
Oh,
and I was trying to, because I wanted it to be, it's about Leah, about Leah's relationship with him and what she's kind of putting onto him. But that wasn't, and in the end, my editor was just like, no, we really, we need to get to grips with what Sholto more, who
mm,
Sholto is. And so I think that was kind of the the main the main thing that changed. And I think, you know, my editor was right that
yeah,
that needed to be done. Yeah, so maybe it was just a little bit of experimentation that didn't quite, in my original kind of vision of the novel, either I wasn't successful in doing it, or maybe it wouldn't have worked anyway. So, but yeah,
yeah,
but that was something that was a change.
yeah, yeah. Pretty substantial one by the sound of it. Although
Yeah,
also almost like a fine tuning, right? Like it was already there, but you sort of had to just find it a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We will talk about spoilers. I hope that's okay with you. It might be a bit uncomfortable being an
Oh, that's
author.
okay.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
the other people in the book, but
yeah.
it's
So
fine.
because it's a
If
book
that's the
club,
way
we
we
often
roll, that's okay.
yeah. Um, that was one of my favorite parts of the novel, I think, was where, and we'll talk more about the novel as well. I want to talk about the lead up to writing it as well. But I just wanted to say I love the scene where Leah comes up to Sholto and he's in the river or in the stream or in the creek.
Yeah,
And he essentially says to her, like, you just imagined all this stuff onto me. Like, you did this to me. And Leah's like, oh, yeah, I kind of did, didn't I? And it was such an interesting, it's almost like she's been this unreliable narrator in a way where she's been,
yeah,
it's her version of the truth, I think, which is so interesting. But Sholto wasn't maybe the arch villain that she'd sort of started to imagine him to be, right?
yeah.
Um, where did that scene, like, was that a very pivotal scene for you, or was it something that just sort of naturally came out of writing the novel?
That scene was actually one of the ones that I had to rewrite several times because because originally he was kind of a bit I don't know, I guess much more malevolent and
Yeah,
was more but yeah, so when he comes to well, hey lady, like you know, you're the one who like,
yeah,
so and when I kind of and it was one of those moments as I writer go, oh yes, that's actually much that just sits much better,
yeah,
with the tone because um, I guess in a novel like this, it's not, it doesn't fit kind of neatly into a crime genre, but there is this sense of, everything's heightened, 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 and we have the climax. But it was just nice to have a little bit where that's kind of I don't know, undercut a little bit. It's not, yeah. So and for Leah, I think yes, it was important for her to go. Oh, hang on, is I because part of her thing is this, she's found herself somewhere where she feels like she hasn't chosen to be here, but actually she did choose,
yeah,
to have a fling with Sholto. That was her choice.
yes.
But she kind of tries to, you were all up in my face and you came round to my house. And he's
Like
like,
she tripped over. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
you know,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, and that's I think one of my favorite things about this book, which again we'll get into, but I just loved how the characters were all these shades, and I think it was a much more interesting choice to paint them in these ways that are perhaps sometimes a bit confrontational, a bit uncomfortable for the reader, where you like Leah, but also you sort of, like, you know what I mean? Like, I love that feeling of ambiguity about what I think about a character. We've got a couple of people in the chat talking about the novel. We'll read a couple of questions. A pretty, I hope, an easy one, but probably an interesting question from Christine N. Just wondering about the name Sholto. It's a very interesting name. Where did that name come from?
It's actually it's a Scottish name. Shows Sholto Douglas was a look. He's some famous kind of not I think he might have been a general or something like
Yeah,
back in the day. And I wanted a name for him that wasn't you know run of the mill. Like I didn't want to call him
yeah,
Paul,
yeah.
Steve. Apologies to any Pauls and Steves listening. They're fine names. But I wanted something that was a little bit just and it's quite possibly a name that Sholto has chosen for himself. Like it's
Yes.
and
Exotic name that's a bit more, ooh, a bit intriguing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So and even though he kind of and because the Sholto, he kind of tells different versions. There's different versions of him, and oh, maybe he's an Irish traveller, but hang on, Sholto's actually a Scottish name, not an Irish name. But so I just wanted something that had a little bit of exotic. It was a little bit exotic, um, and yeah, and it was a name. Actually, my brother had a friend called Sholto, and it just and it's a word that sits well in the mouth. I like the shape of it
Yeah,
in
it's cool.
risotto. So yeah, so for all those reasons.
Sorry, can I ask the chat as well? Am I completely bonkers here? Was there a Sholto that was some sort of animated dog? Am I thinking about something else? Like, was there a Yeah, see, Mary Ray, you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, animated. I don't know, but
I feel like there was some sort of Sholto that was some. I can picture a puppy. Bolto. Oh, so Brand. Thank you. Bolto.
Balto wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, Bolto would be a bit strange. It was close. Thank you, Tony. Tony's got my back. Appreciate you, man. Bolto the Husky. We'll kind of sort of think of Sholto that way a little bit, huh? Um, Aaron has said here, I agree with Ben. Thank you, Aaron. Of course, I am a brilliant person. I found it really interesting that I didn't really like one character. They all showed signs that I didn't love or even like, and that's human.
Mm,
Yeah, I think especially your book feels very real, and I can't begin to describe to you the amount of, I don't know what it was. I don't even know if it's a sort of trauma, but reading the conversations of the community chat, oh
yeah.
my golly, because I belong to community chats and getting photos on there about someone parking too close to the curb of someone else's thing. So then the bin thing is, and I just, oh, I had flashbacks, Mary Rose.
Well, look, I think now, like I'm a member of, like, I don't know, at least three groups like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and actually, since the book's been out, I've had people send me screenshots of of the of, discussions in their own WhatsApp groups or community notice
Oh,
boards or whatever.
it's
Yeah,
just
no,
so, it's just, it was so brilliant how you made them so comfortable with just being so prickly with one another. And it's like the internet sort of removes that polite, congenial kind of barrier.
yeah.
And man, it felt real to life. And I can see there's a few people. Yeah, so Brant has said, I love the community chat group pages. I swear we all live in the same multiverse with local groups. Yep.
Yeah.
I feel very true to that. Randy, questions in the chat are absolutely fine, man. You guys, either typing your questions in the Q&A, or typing questions in the webinar chat. Either way is totally okay. It does, yeah, it's totally fine. We're relaxed here. You guys can ask questions wherever you like. Um, We've got a question from Marlies. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, Marlies. Uh, no worries for joining a little late, but Marlies has asked, I wondered if you've talked about the inspiration. Yeah, so where did you get the idea? Where was the original conception of the campers? And Marlies has added the subject matter is very different from other books that she's read at the moment, or he's read. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Look, there were several points of inspiration. About 15 years ago, um, there in a park near where I live,
Yeah,
there were some tents appeared, and not long after the tents appeared, there had been people living in vans not far away, and they came and they parked there too. And this kind of it sent a little bit of ripple through my neighborhood. And some of the things that people were concerned about, were completely, you know, legitimate. Where are they going to the toilet? Um, are they taking drugs? Are they going to be leaving syringes in the park where the kids play? And the better angels of our neighborhood prevailed, but it did stay with me. And I just thought, I
yeah.
wonder, that would be like, and I did actually, that would make a really interesting novel. And that was before I was writing novels. And so I thought that's, it was just so interesting because there was, just the different reactions that people had to them. And even actually before that, I'd written an article for the Big Issue about the homeless person's legal clinic in Melbourne, which was staffed by some lawyers from some very prestigious firms in Melbourne, and they offered free legal advice to people who were homeless or at risk of becoming homeless.
Yeah.
And I had a chat to this one guy who had come to talk to the lawyers, and he just kind of outlined for me how he'd found himself living on the street. And it was like he'd stepped on this downward traveling escalator. And it was just as, he had, a job, a house, a wife. He was involved in a workplace accident. He got an acquired brain injury. He lost his job. He
Yeah, wow.
couldn't get more work. Of course, it put strain on his marriage. They divorced, separated. He lost the house. He couldn't afford to get, like, he couldn't get another job, he couldn't afford to pay the mortgage, and he found himself on the street. And it was just such a, realization, oh, hang on, like, my situation at that point wasn't, it wasn't as stable as my housing security, etc., wasn't as stable as it is now. It's kind of like, oh, hang
Yeah.
on, that's something that can happen to me. I can get knocked down on the street, get a brain injury, or whatever. And so that kind of was in the back of my mind too when I was writing the campers. And then there was also, um, I don't know if anyone on the chat is involved, is a member of a Good Karma Facebook group. And these are, groups that operate, usually in suburbs or whatever. And so if people need help or want advice, they post on the Good Karma site, and, it might be they're looking for housing or whatever. But
Yeah.
one near to me in Brunswick, it completely imploded to the extent that it was this bizarre thing where someone had been attacked in the street, and they had in their view, and it was a racist attack, and someone had stepped in and had helped this person. Anyway, they posted on the Good Karma Netbook group wanting to find the people who had helped them because he wanted to cook them a meal.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
and when he had explained why he wanted to, he mentioned that it was a racist attack. But because the Good Karma Network group is about positive experiences, they took the post down. And so then people were accusing them of facilitating racism. And
Oh my gosh.
so, and someone printed photos of the administrators of the group and were, sticking them up around Brunswick. And so it made media attention
Wow.
and that sort of thing. It just got, and they had to close the whole thing down. And so,
Wow.
and so that was in the back of my head as
Yeah.
well. And then just as I was writing it, I think I first started writing it in 2020, at least, taking notes and writing scenes and things. Um, the housing crisis wasn't as big a news as it is now. It wasn't so much in our consciousness. So just as I was writing it, the whole housing crisis and the homeless crisis
Yeah.
just became more and more. So the book became more and more of the moment as I was writing it.
Yeah, right. That is a wild, crazy story. That is pretty full on, but we can be pretty quick to take offense, I think, and quick to make a big drama over things that can be quite, I don't know. It's harder to be in conversation with people now. And I think
Yeah,
just by that, we sort of all now retreat, kind of like what Leah does. You're like, okay, I'm not going to get involved. I'm just going to sort of, and that sucks because community is where, we should be
yeah,
okay with this stuff.
yeah.
Um,
And I think two people tend to, in those online conversations, they tend to ascribe motives and things to other people that may
yeah,
not be right.
100%.
And
Yeah.
it's just, but it is funny how some things, because I know, there's a street, um, I have a, neighborhood email list, and there's just sometimes something will just light a fuse, and suddenly, and you think, wow, where did that come from? And now, our administrator is pretty good about, okay, we're going to shut this down. If you want to, this can be taken offline if you want to
Yeah.
pursue it, but we're not
Yeah.
doing it here. Um, but yeah, yeah, someone will see something or hear something or read something that is not meant the way it was intended. It's taken up.
Yeah. There was I belonged very quickly to a community group, and it was I won't be specific, but there were some native trees in the area, and someone had gone through and knitted colorful socks for some of the tree trunks
Yeah.
to, I don't know why, but just for a bit of color. And they were very proudly posting about this. But my gosh, the backlash, and then the backlash to the backlash, and oh my.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Kathy, no problem at all. Very welcome, and it's totally okay. No problem at all. And Marley, same to you. No worries. We are not taking offense. It is totally cool. We're all here getting into Mary Rose's brain as well as we can. That is our only mission in life at the moment. Got a couple more questions I'd love to ask you, Mary Rose. I think this one from Amber is fantastic. And it sort of goes into what we were talking about, this sort of sense of how close to the precipice we actually are when you really look at it, there but for the grace of God go I with the
Mm.
homeless crisis, right? Or housing crisis. So Amber says, I found it really interesting how Leah lived a very comfortable upper middle class life, but through her extended maternity leave and relationship breakdown and the house being in Moses's name, you showed how easy it could be for her to become homeless herself. Was depicting that a big focus behind her character and her choices? It's a good
It
question,
was,
Amber.
yeah, like it wasn't a big focus. But it was one of those things that, came as I was writing the story. Like, yeah, could Leah find herself in, she could, because, she's obviously a procrastinator.
Yeah,
She, sets off she plants little landmines for herself that tend to, have the capacity to blow up in her face. So that
yeah,
was one of the things that, as I was writing it, it became, I wanted her to have that, to kind of reflect, to have a little moment. I didn't want it to be I mean, because I think she will, she had her mother, and, but she was a little bit isolated as well.
yes,
So, yeah, so I wanted there to be just, yeah, a little moment where she realizes, I am a little bit vulnerable here, and
yeah,
do I
yeah,
want to jeopardize, this quite nice life that I have.
yeah. And she seems like she did sort of make her life smaller than it was. Like once motherhood came upon her, it seemed to me at least that she sort of burrowed into that motherhood cocoon and sort of just, yeah, and then emerging from that was proving to be quite a difficult thing. Like it was almost like she was quite comfortable not being very comfortable. I'm not really quite sure of that, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I found her like such an interesting character, and meeting her mum as well, man, like that, her mum. Just what a wild character. Yeah, geez. Um, we've got a couple more questions I'd love to ask. Now, and I see there's been a couple of people talking about this. So in Ben's book club, we do make a point of reading the book before we come. It is supposed to be a book club. So we'll get into some questions about the ending. So if you haven't fully finished the book, I do recommend maybe just for a brief moment here, um, blocking your ears, or maybe honestly just, yeah, maybe checking back in. We do post these interviews to YouTube afterwards, but it is worth preserving the ending for yourself. So if you haven't quite finished the book yet and you want to preserve that, probably be a good time to log out now. But just because I've got so many people asking in the chat about the ending, and there's been some comments on the Facebook group as well,
Mm.
which I found really interesting. It's pretty brave of you, I think, to leave the ending where it was without, and I think this is Alan has said this in the Q&A. I enjoyed the book and the final chapter was quite dramatic, but I found the ending a bit light, as if there might have been another chapter. But
Mm.
was it your intention to leave the reader to make their own conclusions? And can you talk about that and the bravery of leaving that? Because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I've heard other people say, I felt like I wanted an epilogue, 1 year later. Um,
Yeah,
Look, I think there are some things that are fairly, like obviously the Drove is never going to be the same again. And
yes,
I think I do like a few open ends at the end of a book,
I do too.
you know, because life isn't, I don't know, it just isn't neat. And there's something about that, Leah, she, she is someone who, she has let things slide in terms of, like, she fell pregnant, her sister helped to get a job, and I kind of wanted to end it where she has to kind of step up. Is she going to,
Yeah,
what choice is she going to make? Is she going to fight for this relationship with Moses and her life on the Drove, and their kind of project to bring the children up together,
yeah,
or is she going to let him decide what
yeah,
happens? And I guess I wanted, so I wanted that kind of uncertainty. Is she going to make a decision to try and save this marriage, save this relationship? And I wanted for readers to decide for themselves
Mm.
what she would do. But I think for me, I personally, I think there is a note of optimism for Leah and Moses at the end.
Yep.
I think the drove is done. I think, Chanda and Dilsha, they'll be out of there. I think probably
Man.
Barb and Wanda will stay. Uh,
Yep.
but I think the drove is done. And I kind of thought there was a bit of, it's not, I think there's I think Vivian is going to be okay. She has Miguel now in her corner, and I think she's going to be okay. And I think Anders, I don't know about Anders, but I think there is a little note of optimism for Anders as well. So I did, I thought about writing that conversation that Leah and Moses might have, and just something in me resisted that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
can see that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's sort of, to me, it sort of made me like to me, it felt like the ending said to me, it didn't matter. Like it doesn't matter what happens in their conversation. The ending of the novel and the ending of the story you wanted to tell to me was that it felt like that community, that prickliness of the community group was finally just fully unleashed on each other. And
yeah,
it was what their actual natures were versus that civility that maybe our civilization keeps up. And so then in the destruction of all that, it was sort of like they were tearing down, they were sort of showing how ugly how they really thought of each other and how they
yeah,
really treated others. And that I think was the ending. That to me was like, oh man, yeah.
yeah,
So I want to treat people kindly. Like I want to be a person who will speak with kindness on the internet or at home and treat people with civility and
yeah.
generosity. And I liked seeing Leah sort of step away from that. And a few of the characters did that. And then she went
Mm.
and saw Moses. So I felt the same way. I felt there was a great deal of optimism in the ending as well, even if it
Yeah,
was a bit like it was a bit of a, I don't know, it sort of seems like a bit of a wake-up call, a bit of a bit of you showing, hey, this is how you're really dealing with each other. And it sort
mm.
of made me reflect on our humanity, I guess. I loved it. I thought it was one of my favorite things of the book
Oh,
was,
thank you.
yeah, I think it was a brave choice and it's a much more interesting choice. Um, I think the only, yeah, I kind of wanted to know if Moses was actually having an affair
Yeah,
because Leah had shown herself to be, yeah, and see, I like the shrug too, because like he could be. I
yeah,
mean, Stein sort of
yeah.
pointed that way, but yeah, I love, I love you not giving
That
us the,
colleague in the hills was, does she really have a husband? Anyway, yeah.
yes,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, all of it because, because Leah, I suppose because Leah doesn't really, she doesn't know either. And I guess that will, probably that will be revealed in that conversation that she and Moses have.
yeah. I think I love to how you didn't make everyone again, there's no mustache twirling villains. Like everyone had a point of view, and all the point of views were pretty reasonable. Like it's not unreasonable to say that the campers were, in this space and they were wrecking things and they did steal and they were a bit, chaotic and it was an
Mm,
impact on the community. It was a negative thing, but they're also human beings. And I thought you didn't make anyone fully evil. Even, Bush, driving the dozer through their camp at the end. Look, that's pretty drastic and terrible, especially when they might have been in the camp and in the tents
yeah,
themselves. But it wasn't without its like I kind of get it. Like you want to protect and keep safe the things that are dear to you.
yeah.
When
And I think
somebody
what I hoped too is that, that people's sympathies might have gone back and forth a bit. That sometimes they would have been, team campers and other times they're team drovers. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so yes, I didn't yes, I didn't want either group to be, yeah, they're the good ones, they're the reasonable ones, and these ones are out of control. I wanted there to be a little bit of yeah, gray, a
Yes.
gray area with them. Yeah.
Great. I love great. It's like it makes the book not. I feel like you run the risk of alienating some readers who just want those clean answers, but it's my favorite thing. It's where a book is, what do you think about this? Like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what I think. I want you to think for me and give me easy bad guys to hate. I want to hate them, but
Mm.
I kind of
Yeah.
like them, you know? Um, we got a great question from Randy. This is just about your process. Randy's actually going off in the Q&A chat. Randy's asking a lot of questions, which I love. Thank you, Randy. But just a couple of craft questions about, do you plot? Like, do you have a lot of structure? Do you have a big whiteboard, or do you just write off the cuff? Are you a pantser a little bit?
Uh, Initially, I am a complete pantser. I usually start, there's just like it's a feeling or it's an image or it's something that I have to wrestle with, and then I just start writing scenes that in no particular order.
Yep.
And at a certain point, I go, oh, what am I doing? And then I try and shape it somehow.
Yeah.
And at that point, I might try, I don't have a whiteboard, but I might do, little cards with, this, or, columns with this is happening in this chapter. And then I
Yep.
usually put that aside and then I get stuck into it again and it usually veers completely off. I try and kind of plan it and plot it and then um, I kind of tend to write away from that rather than write to it. But I keep going back. But initially, I'm certainly a pantser, and then I try to become a plotter.
Yeah, I get you. I actually think there's something beautiful and messy in the sort of intuitive writing where the rough edges are less likely to be sanded off before you get to them, and then you sort of have to put on your plotting hat a little bit at the end and make a
Yeah,
sense of
yeah,
the
and
mess. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not a very efficient way to write.
No.
But I can't. If I try and plot it all out, it doesn't. There's no juice. There's no. So I just have kind of
Yes.
to, follow the heat
Yep.
and at a certain point try and get a bit more organized. But yeah, if I'm not
Yep.
following the heat or there's nothing.
I like that saying, like the juice. I agree. It just
Mm.
feels juicier when it's coming from the heart a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what Hemingway said, right? Right, drunk and edit sober. That's what we're talking about. Nicole has this great question here. You mentioned your friend earlier in this chat today said this was the first time they couldn't hear your voice in their ear. Was this actually something that you really pushed into? Was it an intentional tonal choice, or did it just naturally sort of come out from telling the story from Leah's sort of close perspective?
Uh, I think because I had to well, I don't know whether I decided. It was like when I was writing the story, it was all from Leah's point of view, and she's
Yeah,
quite a different beast to me. So I guess and then at a certain point in the novel, because with the cane, it was told from several different points of view,
yeah,
getting a bit, oh, maybe I need somebody, maybe I need another voice in the novel. So I did a little bit where it was from Anders' point of view and then something from somebody else's point of view. And that was at one point my editor said, no, we're going with, I think you need to go with Leah and Leah's voice alone. And and that was a bit hard because I love Anders. I love his character. Sometimes it's those secondary characters. I saw someone else say how they loved Fleur.
yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
I like it. Sometimes it's those. I think I was listening to an interview with Andrew O'Hagan, and he was and his novel Caledonia Road, and there's a whole cast of characters, and he was saying how often he finds it's in those secondary characters where the moral center of the work lies. And I think for me, the moral center does lie with Fleur and with Anders. For me, they're kind of the moral center of the work. So, yes, it was. So it was a bit of a wrench to get rid of Anders' voice was in a strong way in the novel. So
Mm.
I think because I think it was from just that one perspective, that was why, and I think that's kind of why I struggled with it a bit too, because I had to kind of stay with Leah and
Mm.
kind of try and work her out a bit.
You did have that great scene though in the middle of the novel where you do sort of give Anders a bit of a platform. So hopefully,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you got a little bit of him out and his perspective there because I thought that was. But I
Mm,
see again, like you started with him being this crazy sort of, I guess, drunk, but just this person who you see just wild, chaotic, messy, can't go near that person. They're dangerous. You see
mm,
him stealing chickens, and then you see him, saving Leah's daughter, and then you see him, he's messy and yeah, see, you do this thing, and I think, sorry, and I want to just go back up here. Um, I forget where you put it. There was someone who was typing about it, but just that's like you put the human characters just so well, Maryrose, where they have so many areas of where they're complex. Oh, here it is. This is what Amber's saying here. Um, I think very often as a society, we can equate moral character with wealth. So the wealthiest among us are also the best among us.
mm.
People facing hardships such as homelessness are seen as having lesser moral character than those who have a house and a job, etc., like Anders. And Amber says, I like how you pulled that apart and showed that people and are messy and complex, regardless of their circumstances. And it was
Yeah.
really cool that you took Leah on this journey where she sort of started with antagonism, but sort of slowly came to see real people there.
Mm.
And it was even cool, like sometimes you had some of the drovers like Barb, who were very kind generally and had a great heart for people and very generous. But even they, like even in their generosity, were still almost setting themselves apart. Like their generosity was almost a bit condescending.
Yeah, yeah.
And, they still weren't like Leah actually connected with Anders. And
Mm.
that the real connection is the thing that's the real equalizer, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
just giving you lots of compliments. I like the book.
Well, yes, I suppose, because there's that, I feel, I have got saying before, I've got housing security, our household income is, reliable and stable. And, there's that discomfort, I feel, and I think lots of us feel when we do have that security and stability, and then, we walk past, or don't, some of us don't walk past, some of us stop. But, a lot of us, myself included, walk past those people on this, some people on the street, we might give them a coin, or we might, ask them if they want a cup of coffee and buy them a coffee, or whatever. But there's this, there's a discomfort for me, and I think for lots of us who have enough or more than enough, and know that we're living alongside people who have very, very little. So,
Yeah.
and I think that discomfort also removes us. It makes that discomfort makes us hard. It makes it hard to kind of reach across
Yeah.
the gap between us. And so I was interested in those people like, well, because Anders, he doesn't really see the gap. Like he'll chat to,
Yes.
he doesn't really in his personal interaction. So he's a bit chaotic and a bit, he has his issues going on, but I think, at his heart there's a good person there who's had
Yeah.
some,
Yep.
some knocks. And Miguel in a way too, he's prepared to kind of reach across that gap, and he, kind of wants to help Vivian, and, kind of obviously falls in love with Vivian. So um yeah, so I was interested in how we, yeah, in that discomfort, and how we can kind of reach through or break down that discomfort so that we can just talk to each other as, oh yeah, this is a person, a human person who is, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, has found themselves in this situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not treating people like they're an issue, like not treating people like they're part of an issue. They're people,
Yeah.
with yeah. Um, there's some interesting chat going on. I don't know whether you can see the chat, Mary Rose. You brought up a
Yeah.
lot of interesting conversation. Um, Yeah, I actually agree. I don't think that it's just part of religion or belief systems. I think it's like a real subconscious thing that we, as you know, as Mary Rose was talking about, like we are part of this sort of privilege of having security in our housing and our employment and having a steady income and all those sorts of things. But it is this thing where we start to subconsciously just treat people as inferior, and it's like a moral choice we've made without actually thinking about it, which I think is probably some of um some of the most insidious ways in which we can do harm to others, in that we do it without thinking or knowing that we're doing it, which is
Yeah,
again why this book's so powerful, I think, and brought up so many questions. um yeah, judgment is much easier to do than trying to understand. And that's, again, why this book is so good, because this is a book that isn't easy, right? This is a book that makes you feel a little bit of discomfort with the situation, with the characters, and how you viewed them originally. And you sort of go with the journey with Leah. So that's why this is good. And that's why open endings and ambiguity and fiction and asking questions, I think, more powerful than like really easy answers. Um, we're nearly out of time, if you can believe this. I can't actually believe that we've been chatting for an hour, Mary Rose. I don't know how you're going.
yeah,
Um, I'm sorry. Listen, I'm sorry. I'm going back. I don't know whether you can see the chat, Mary Rose, and maybe it's a good
yeah,
time for you to have a quick look at seeing if there's any questions that striked your fancy as we went through. But there is a lot of people asking questions and having a
yeah,
lot of good chats about your book here. So it's brought up a lot in a lot of people.
yeah,
Um, So yeah, I do apologize. We like to try to get to as many questions as possible, but it's just, unfortunately, we only have the hour.
yeah. Actually, I've got
Um,
just there's a question here from Philippe. And
yeah.
there's Leah's description of how she felt about her body after childbirth and all those demands really on her hit me as a male. It was really appreciated. Was there a particular reason or message that you wanted to send? So I just really like that question because that was, yeah, Leah's my children are adults now, so that period is quite a long time away from me, but from where I am now. But I mean, I still remember that, having two young kids, one who's breastfeeding and one who's a toddler, and wants all your attention, and just that feeling that your body's not your own.
Mm,
And I think that's so with Leah's, yeah. So, and I think part of what attracts her to Sholto, because it's come, she's at this kind of point in her marriage which she may or may not get through, where her husband, she feels the same kind of thing. It's this physical demand on my body, and it feels very domestic, while with Sholto there's this kind of wildness and this kind of there's something feral in that, and I think that's why she responds to him sexually like that. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, cool
wasn't a
question.
message that I wanted to send so much, Philippe, just more it was, and I've heard, and I've a couple of other um women who have, and they say, oh yeah, I remember that, that point where you really just feel like there's always a baby hanging off you, or you're always covered in spit, or there's someone's hands like digging into your pants because their mom did this. So I just, Sholto was something that was completely outside the domestic, and I think that's why
Yeah,
yes, she responded to him the way she did.
yeah, yeah. My children both still use my wife as a pillow when we're watching TV together. And she doesn't want to push them off because she knows they're 12 and 10, so they're getting older and they won't always be right next to her like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can tell she's like, just
Can I just have this much
yeah,
space?
just give me my couch back.
Yeah,
Sorry, it says here Zoom user. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm also Queenslander, so 6:30. Yeah, apologies about that. That's a shame. But as Kathy said, it is being recorded. It will be put up on the YouTube, so don't worry. And in fact, I'll type it again. See if I can work my machines here. I can't. If you Oh, here we go. Hooray, I did it. If you sign up there, you'll be able to actually, we do post the YouTube video when it goes up on the Facebook thing. Um, all right, so we're actually just about out of time, Maryrose. Can you just very quickly tell us what we can expect from you next? What's the next thing we should be excited for to have you back on Ben's Book Club?
All right. Well, I'm actually working on a sequel to The Cane, Ben.
Whoa,
um,
whoa, mic drop. That's cool.
but I think it's going to be 10 years in the future, and it'll take the female copper, Carmel, and put her in Brisbane in kind of those years prior to the Fitzgerald inquiry, the bad old days, and yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Wow. I think I'm going to have a lot of excited people in the group who love the cane. So that's awesome to hear. If you wouldn't mind, Maryrose, do you mind going back through and just having a quick look to see if there's anyone in particular that stands out to get the free copy of the book? Um, and yeah, Marlies, thank you. That's awesome to hear. Just a couple of quick announcements too, as Maryrose takes a bit of a scroll. I've posted a couple of times the Facebook group. If you're interested, we would love to have you join up. We do one of these every month. Next month, we're going to be, I believe, focusing on a book called The Chilling by an author named Riley James. And this is a debut. So this is Riley's first book. And we love, just like we did with Maryrose, with, well, sort of your debut, it was your fiction debut, right? We love
Yeah.
supporting debut authors. So if you can all get behind that one, read that one, and come along to the chat to show Riley just, how many good readers there are in Australia, that would be wonderful. We also have coming up in April, we have the Libby Book Club, which is sort of our sister program. Which runs at a bit of a different time for people who have a different body clock than me. But that one starts at 7:30 Australian Western Standard Time. So that is a Western Australian 7:30, so about 9:30 on the coast here. And my brain doesn't work for Queensland. But um, Dave Allen Patel will be talking to Holden Shepherd, and Holden's sort of pretty big at the moment with his book Invisible Boys being turned into that series on Stan. He's got a sequel to that coming out called King of Dirt. So that's going to be a cool chat. If you want more book club action, go and check out the Libby Book Club as well, and Holden Shepherd in April. And it is on April 16th. And I'll be posting a link to that in the Ben's Book Club Facebook group as well. Oh, awesome. That's good, Randy. That's really cool to hear. That's really cool. Thank you so much as well to all of you in the chat. This has been awesome. And all your questions and all of your thoughts, I loved reading it. It just makes my heart feel really warm that there's so many thoughtful people in Australia and in America and the UK as well. Ian and Randy, I see you guys. But Maryrose, have you got a question in mind for the free copy?
I think it's going to go to Amber because
Amber.
I think she really engaged with the story and yeah.
Amber, Amber, am I right in remembering that you've won this before because you are such a thoughtful person, or is this your first time? Am I misremembering? I have it. Yeah, awesome. That's great. I love it. Amber, congratulations. Either way, you would have won the book. Let's be honest. You're just such a star. But congrats. Free copy of the book. Awesome. That's lovely to hear. Please, I'll try to tag you in on Facebook, but we will exchange Facebook, or if you like, actually, I'll type this here, Amber, if you don't mind. I'll just type my website. If you click that and there's a form there and you just send me the email, and I should see your email is from you officially, but then we can start to email there and talk about addresses and where to send the copy. But thank you, Maryrose. Can we just give Maryrose, and I see you guys are already doing it, clap for Maryrose. Woo!
Thank you so much. It was great conversation, Ben, and thanks to everyone with the questions. That was really brilliant. Really good.
Yeah, it's a good, I don't know whether, I think back when we first started, I think we had probably half the attendees when we first did this. And you can just see like it's really grown the community, and there's lots of good chatter, and it's such a fun thing to do every month. I love it.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to read books like The Campers. Please go and tell people about this too. Go and spread the word about the campers. Go and buy copies and give them to your friends, and start to have chats about the things that make us feel uncomfortable, but are probably a really worthy thing to chat about with our friends, about treating each other with kindness and not being as judgmental. But Maryrose, thank you for everything you do. I hope you're really well, and I'm looking forward to reading the future things you produce.
Thanks, Ben. I hope we get to chat again soon.
Same. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you
Thanks,
on the next.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.